So I thought I'd just try and keep it a fairly short video to show you the different ways in which you can create a project in Studio and just talk a little bit about the benefits of one or the other. So I'm going to start off with the drag and drop approach. So I'll take a single file and I'll just drag and drop this into Studio. So a window comes up and I'm asked to create a new project or translate as a single document. I'm going to look first of all at the translate as a single document approach. So I'm going to click on Translate as Single Document. This will bring up a window which has some languages pre-selected. In this case I'm going English to Welsh. These languages are determined, just let me show you where they are if I cancel that. These languages are determined through your File, Options, Editor, Languages. And in there, whatever languages you set here will be the languages that are automatically pulled up with the Translate Single Document. These become your default languages. So I'm going to click on OK. Just let me come back to here again. I'll take my single file and drag and drop it in. And I'm going to translate a single document. At this point I could add a translation memory. So I'll add one. And I'll pick this English to Welsh translation memory. When I do that, this translation memory is now added to my default settings. So the next time I do this, as we'll see when I do the next one, that translation memory will already be there. That can be annoying sometimes if you work with a lot of translation memories because you end up adding an awful lot into your settings, and if they don't match the languages, you end up with lots of grayed out languages and just too many to deal with, which is another good reason why working with Studio projects as opposed to this single document approach can be a good way of working. But let's just progress because I'm digressing a little bit already. So I've got my languages, I've got my TM, I click on OK. So the file opens up for translation, pretty straightforward, it's ready to go. And if I press Ctrl S just to save it, and then close that, the saving action created a project. And if I click on my projects view, you'll see now if I go down to the bottom here, let me move this down a bit so I've got more space and I can see them without scrolling all the time. You can see I've now got this single file project. In this type column here, you can see that it's even called a single file project. So this differentiates it from the way of working with Studio where you work with full Studio projects. This is just single project. So that's the first thing. Now, if I go back to my files view here and I click on Explore Containing Folder, this will take me to the location of where that source file is. So if I click on the Explore Containing Folder, you can see that it's taken me to the Studio 2019 default folder, and in there to the project's drop files folder. And the drop files folder, this becomes the location where every single file project you create will be placed. It will take a copy of your single file. It will create an SDL proj file which does not contain your translations. It only contains metadata telling Studio where everything is. And you'll get a bilingual file, an SDL XLIF file that contains the source language and the target language. So that's the first thing to note. It's put it into Drop Files Project Studio 2019. Now, if I close that file, because that's basically how you do it, remove it from the list, and this time I'll go to File, Translate Single Document, which you'd think is the same approach. And in fact, to begin with, it looks like it. I can pick my file, so that wasn't a drag and drop, but I picked my file up, and here's my box again. So it's picked it up, my language is already selected. This time the translation memory is already there because it's now in my default settings because I added it. If I was to add another one, take that one, so I have two. Now both of these will be there. And I click on OK. This opens my file up ready for translation. I press Ctrl S just to save it. That saves it in the background, and if I go to my files view and explore the containing folder again, this time it's not in the same location. It is not in the drop files folder. This time it's created the same files, so we've got an SDL proj file and an SDL XLIF file, but it doesn't take a copy of the single file that I opened up. This is the single file I actually opened. So it's created the project files in the same location as that. And if I come back over to my total command, you can see now that I've got these extra files that are in here that weren't there before. So if you want to work with the single file approach, which means just one file at a time, and you want them always to be stored in the same locations as your customer folders, then you should use the file translate single document approach. If you don't care about that and you'd rather that the project files were just put somewhere else and you don't have to think about them and they can all go in one big bucket, then you can use the drag and drop approach, and that will put them all into the drop files folder. There'll be no organization over the files whatsoever. After you've been working for a year or two, you're going to end up with thousands and thousands of files in one folder. You can go and delete them, of course, when you're finished with them, but there's no organization around it. It's just one folder. So that's pretty much the pros and cons of two different ways of working with a single file project. Now, let's take a look at dealing with what I would call proper studio projects. So in here, I've got a number of files, and that I've got some different files. So 4 Word files, an Excel file, and a PowerPoint. I've got some term bases, and I've got some TMs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the process of creating a new project in Studio using the normal project approach, and then I'm going to show you how that, having done that once, how you can use that to speed up the process in future. So just let me remove that file again from the list so I don't have that in there, and then I'm just going to go and delete those files out of here because I don't want them in here. Okay, so that's just me tidying my folders up. It's nothing to do with what I'm about to show you. So we'll start off with the source. It doesn't matter whether I use the new project. The new project will actually bring up the wizard straight away, or I can use the drag and drop approach. There is a slight difference between the process, and I'll explain what that is. So if I click on this and I drag and drop into Studio and I just drop them in, I'm going to click on Create New Project. What this will do is it brings up the wizard that we just saw, but this time the source files are already there, so I haven't got to go and add them. So the drag and drop just speeds up the process a bit of adding your files in. Now, for the purpose of this exercise, I'm going to use one language pair. You can see here I could create a multilingual project if I wanted to, which is one of the benefits of creating a Studio project, because if you create a translate single document project or the single document through drop files, that's a bilingual project only. You cannot have a multilingual project, and you cannot have more than one file. So here I could have multilingual and I can have more than one files. I'll just delete all of these languages and I'm just going to go Welsh. And in case you didn't notice what I did there, you can type in the language codes if you know them and very quickly enter your target languages. So I can go German, Dutch, Netherlands, French, Canada, whatever you want. If you know the codes, and I guess if you're a project manager you would know the codes, it's a very quick way of setting up your new projects. Anyway, I'm digressing again. So I'll pick my, I don't want to go German, I want to go Welsh, English. Okay, English, United States, Welsh. I'm going to use the default template. I'll leave it at the default template for the time being, and I'll change the project name. Now when I do this, whatever I write in for the project name will be automatically created here, and this will become the folder where this project is placed. So every file related to this project will be created in this location. And I'll show you more about project locations in a minute, or in a few minutes. So we'll call this one my first Studio project. I can have spaces in there, I just chose not to write. In fact, let's just do that. In case you think I shouldn't have spaces, you can have space. You can put whatever you want in there, and you can see how this changed as I was going along. And I'm just going to click OK there. So I'll click on Next. All my files are ready to go. I can then make some changes in here if I want to. I want to allow source editing and enable merging segments across paragraphs, so I'll leave that as it is. I could select a customer if I wanted to. I'm not going to set up a date. I'm not going to ask anyone to verify it because I'm only creating the project for myself. I know I may be going a bit quick here, but it's a video, so hopefully you'll be able to go back and replay it if I've gone too fast. So translation resources is the next tab, and in there I've got my 2 TMs because they were in my default settings, but actually I want to have another TM in there, so I'm going to add also this university research TM. So I want to have 3 translation memories there. I only want to update one. I could update them all if I wanted to, but these two here are just references for me, so I'll leave it like that. If I wanted to, I could even add I could even add a machine translation engine if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to work with my translation my translation memories. I then go to my term-based tabs, and I'm going to use a file-based term-based, and I'll pick this Roman terms. I could have several term-based if I wanted to. I'll just take that one. And in fact, I'll just go back to the translation resources here, and I'm just going to change this and say minimum match value. Actually, I wanted it to be 50 for this particular project. And penalties, I might say one of my TMs was aligned, so I don't want an alignment penalty. For example, I can make any changes I want in there. I can go back to my term bases. I could go through and make any changes at any of these stops along the way. But that's enough. That's all I really want to do. I could make some changes in here if I wanted to. So minimum translation value, I might say I want that to be 90. And then I finish. That's basically the project creation process when you do it the full way, which seems an awful lot longer than doing the single project. But there's a couple of things you need to notice. The first thing is, in this box when I first created, I can, if I want to, create a new project template based on this project. So I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to click on close. And when I do that, it brings up a save window in the default location where all my project templates are. And I'm going to call this my, let's say my Roman template number 1. And again, I don't need to have underscores. I could leave spaces. You can see I've got a mix and match. Sometimes I have, sometimes I didn't. But I'm going to say no spaces in this one, and I'm going to call it Roman template 1. And I save it. So my project is now created. If I double click on it, you can see all my files are in there. If I explore the containing folder so you can see where it is, it's put it in my default Studio 2019 folder under the projects folder, and then under my Studio project, which is the name of my folder. And in here I have this is the source language folder, and contains a copy of all of the source files plus all of the SDL XLIF files, which are the bilingual files. I have a target language folder. If it was a multilingual project, I'd have had a target language folder for each of those. And I've got bilingual files in there. I've got an export folder. There'll be nothing in there at the moment. I've got a reports folder which contains my reports. We'll look at those now. So the other thing this gives me is if I click on my reports view, you'll see now I have an analysis file. And this analysis file has already been carried out, and this analyzes the entire project against the translation memories that I used. So you can see here that I've got quite a lot of this file has been translated already. Out of 1,378, 898 have not been translated, but all the rest have been translated. This is as a whole. If I scroll down a bit, I have the analysis on the individual files as well. And I can save that report as I like, if I like, into a number of different formats, including Excel, which makes it really easy to use. There's the different formats you can have. So that's quite handy. You've got your analysis automatically when you create the projects this way. If I click on the pre-translate files, you'll see that I have a little report in here as well. This gives me some idea of how many words were changed, how many weren't. So 425 were translated out of 1,378. So this gives me a very simple report, and I could copy paste that if I wanted to and use it for whatever purpose I wanted. So that can be quite useful. So this comes out of the box already done, and you don't have to run any batch tasks if you use this approach. The other benefit to doing this is if I had more files, I can add more files to this project at any time. I cannot add more files to this if I'm using the single document approach. It's only one at a time. So if I went over here, where do I have more files? And I clicked in, let's go and find something. Okay, we'll take this file here. I can drag and drop this file like that. Studio will ask me if I want it to be a source file or a reference file, and I can add it to the project at that point. So it's really simple to be able to add new files. Actually, there is a quicker way. You can add files here. You can add files, quick add files. So quick add files, I can pick up any file I've got. We'll take this one now because it's convenient. It'll save me running around looking for another file. I can click on open, and that's automatically prepared it, run it against the TM, and it's now available for me to translate. It's in here like this. So it's very, very simple to add new files whenever you're working this way using the Studio project. I'm going to remove that one. I'll just delete files because I don't want that. I don't know if it's put it in here too. It's there too, so I'll delete it from there as well. Okay. So there's my project. The other benefit of doing this is I can open multiple files at the same time. So if I wanted to open these two Word files in this order, Socky first and then Sagittari, I can just open for translation after selecting them, and Studio is going to open both of those files up in the order I selected them immediately for me to translate all together. I can even do that across files. So if I was to come back here and, oops, if I was to select them all, for example, and open for translation, it will open all of the files up for translation. And this time you can see I've got the first Word file. This is in the order in which they were opened. The Excel file, the sheet, Praetorians, the PowerPoint. It's got everything in here. By slide even, look at that. And then I've got the other Word files. So you can tackle every file you've got in your project in one go if you want to. So these are benefits of working with this. Now, another really important thing to note, I know I'm going very quickly, is you remember when I started, I created a project template and I saved that. So if I wanted to create a new project at any point, I can now go New Project, and I could pick from my templates, if I just see more, Roman Template 1. And when I do that, you'll get a message saying, this is going to overwrite all the settings I've defined. Are you sure you want to continue? I'm going to say yes. So you can see my languages have changed to what I wanted. I've got a project for my template. Sorry, project name, where I can type in the name of my second project. I'll call that second project. I'm going to confuse you with all of this ridiculous rambling I'm doing. So project name, second project. Then I go back, pick some more files. Let's just take these ones this time. I can drop these into Studio like that. Now I could just finish at this point, but I just want to show you the benefit of this. So it becomes very quick. If I click on my translation resources, my 3 TMs are already there, my term bases are already there. So using that template means that I've already got all the information I need for this project already there. And I can just click finish, and there's my project created. So actually, once you've done this once you've got some templates or anything like that, creating a second project becomes extremely quick. Ignore this window, all these notifications about creating an invoice. This is because I've got this little Backslide plugin installed down here. Excuse me, I should have removed all these plugins before I did this video, but I didn't. Anyway, might be interesting for you to see that. So here's my second project, already created. Now what you can also do is, if you've already got a load of projects, you can create a template from your projects. So say for example I wanted to create a template for the setup that I use for this particular project. I can right click on it and I can say create a project template. When I do that, it just brings me up to the same location. I can pick type in a name for the template. Backs. No, I won't call it backs. I'm just going to call it my EN2DE template. You can call it whatever you like. Save it, and that's it now there. I can make some changes to it if I want to. So I could change the name. So apologies for this little interlude, but I realized after I completed this video that I forgot to tell you about something I've mentioned earlier, which is about project locations. So I've just cut into the video at this point, come back to where I was in here, and I want to talk about project location. So you'll notice that in the template itself can have a project location, and if I change this location, then when I use the project template, whichever location this is the location that will be used to store the project. So for each project template you can have a different location, which does give you a mechanism for organizing your work. So you, for example, if you had a template per language, then you could have all your English German in one folder, all your English Welsh in another folder, all your French Spanish in another folder, or maybe you might want to organize it by customer. So you'd have a customer folder, and that would be the location you put in here, and every project you do for that customer using that customer's template, which could contain their TMs, their term bases, the settings they like to use for quality assurance, all that sort of thing, will be saved in that customer folder. So it's very flexible, and the way to get to it is, if I close that, is if you go to File, Setup, where we haven't been yet, and then Project Templates, that will list all of the project templates that you've created. And if you select the one you want and then click on Edit, that will take you to the template and you can make any changes you want to it. So after you've already created your templates, you've still plenty of time in order to be able to change things. So with that, I'm now going to pass back to where I was originally in the video. I apologize for that little interlude. I could make some changes to the file type settings if I wanted to. I could change specific verification settings. I could change whatever I like inside here. This is a bit like the project settings, a bit like your file options, but it's per project template. So you can have different settings for every template you create. I'll just click on OK there. So that's all done. And then when I create a new project and I go back and browse my templates, you can see there's my END template. So if I click on that one and say yes, you can see now I've got my English to German. It's already set up. If I go to my translation resources, oh, I need to put a file in there first. Let's just drop something in there, just so I can get to the next stage of the window. Go to my translation windows, translation resources. I've now got an English to German TM in there that's already there. So it's very, very quick and convenient to be able to create your projects using project templates. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much the difference between using a single file document and creating full studio projects. I know that was really fast. It's 20 minutes to go through quite a lot of information, but I hope there was something in there that you'll be able to play back and see what I actually did. And if you feel that you have any questions from that, please type them into the YouTube comments, or alternatively go to the SDL community. The SDL community, I'll show you where it is. If you didn't know about the community, it's a very good place to be able to get help at any time on any questions you have. You don't need a support contract or anything else to use the SDL community. If I just grab this tab where it's loading, pull this over here, you'll find the community at community.sdl.com. In fact, if I just go to that community, that's what it looks like when you go there. I'm logged in already, so it's a little bit different, but you'll see this sort of information down the bottom. And if you see this translation productivity group and click on join the conversation, this is essentially what you want, because this contains all of the forums for the sort of things that you're likely to be using. So we have a forum for AutoHotkey, a general forum, one for licensing and installation, one for multi-term, product updates. If you use regex, regular expressions, or XPath, we have forums for that. A special forum for asking questions on App Store applications. We have one obviously for Studio, for Language Cloud, and one about technical documentation and product help. There's lots of other groups as well and things which you'll be able to get involved with if you use more of the community. I'd recommend you go and take a look at it. It's extremely easy to use. This is just a system notification for me. If I click on an individual forum, like the Studio forum, for example, you can see this takes you down to lots of questions and things that have been asked. You can see it's quite busy because this is all stuff that's been taken place today. There's a few here that haven't had any answer yet after 4 or 5 hours, or no, 4 hours, 5 hours, so probably we need to go and take a look at those. It is 5:30 on a Friday, but I'm sure they'll get an answer fairly soon. And that's it. That's all I wanted to show you in this video. I hope it was helpful, but if not, ask your question in the community or ask your question in the YouTube comments. Either way, I don't mind. And have a good weekend.